Hello. Well, you're probably wondering why we're looking at the wagon right now. Well, like I've said there a video or two ago, we're overdue for some updates, but we finally got some nice weather. Snow is gone, grass is growing, so we're finally able to stay outside longer in the day. I'm actually outside with just um, some pants and a t-shirt. Haven't been able to do this in quite a long time, and actually, the warm window is all day, not just a couple mere hours. So we're outside busting our butt on a bunch of stuff, and thought I'd make this video while a few things are kind of cooling off. So I got a little bit of downtime here to talk. So what have we been doing with the wagon? Because a lot of my recent videos have not been including it. We've been focusing on some EXP stuff and a lot of literature. Well, the literature is because it's been awfully cold outside. The weather's been quite unfair, but car-wise, we haven't been spending too much time on the wagon because March 2nd, I think it was, this guy tried burning down. Stuff got real nasty up in here. What was the culprit? Well, we believe it to be the alternator. I'll prop up the hood and try to demonstrate a few things. So I was just driving it around. The day before this happened, I actually drove it all the way up into Eau Claire for a few errands. So that's like an hour from my place. Yeah, about an hour from my place. So yeah, so drove into town, came back without really much hassle, aside from it trying to stall a couple times, but that's because the carb needs some tweaking, and I'm pretty sure there's also a vacuum leak in the intake itself, not vacuum lines, but I think one of my intake gaskets is bad. So that went okay. I go to work the next day, and as soon as I park it at work, it's smoking a little bit, which I'm not no stranger to. So every now and then, a little bit of oil will trickle out of the cap here because these seals like never work anymore. They're 40 some years old. There's no replacements, so they drip onto the tray, and that you can see the tray doesn't go all the way around. It doesn't really hold much oil. It trickles down the sides here right away, straight onto the hot manifold. So you'll occasionally get a wee bit of steaming if that's dripping, or if your back hose here is weeping a tad. Same with that hose. How are the valve covers? So it was that, and like it looked like normal smoke that would be happening when we get a tad bit of oil on the exhaust manifold. So I go inside and I start doing a few things. A minute or two later, a coworker comes rushing and says, "Hey, your car's on fire." I'm like, "Oh, really?" So I come on out, and yep. I mean, it wasn't really on fire, but this area was smoldering where my intake is obviously missing. I did obviously melted down on the back side of the radiator cover, the fan shroud for the radiator. Melted down my exhaust pipe, melted on the manifold some, melted all over one of my AC lines. Hopefully it didn't burn out my AC line. Melted my alternator intake bellow or boot, tube, whatever you want to call that. And it tried burning up my entire intake snorkel. Upon further examination, you can see it tried burning up one of my spark plug wires even. So that one is obviously toast. And the one underneath it, not much better. This is my block heater wire. It was only just recently dangled here. Because keep in mind, this was like March 2nd, so I've been driving around all month like that. As I have to plug in the car. almost every single night because it's always been like 2 degrees in the mornings, and all the way down the exhaust manifold. Ugh, whole lot of ugly. So that happened, and haven't been able to address it because about the time this had happened, I was already starting to work on. We'll zoom in here. Green EXP. Greenie 82 EXP. Started working on that, getting that on the road because I was growing tired of using this guy. So this has no working radio. The heat has been problematic. It's due for a thermostat. It's due for an entire engine rebuild. The engine runs great, but it's leaking in a few spots. It might have a head gasket leak. But the bigger thing is it's always leaking its stuff. I mean, it's even leaking oil through the distributor into and underneath the rotor, the cap and rotor. So that's been creating an intermittent spark. So I've been dealing with that. Half of the emission systems have already been removed and disabled, but a lot of the stuff still remains, so it makes changing the oil a nightmare. So you can see there's a bunch of stuff going on here, especially with it being an automatic. There's a lot more linkage involved. So it's just been a long list of stuff. And then I totally forgot that the alternator needed changing at some point. I already put all new belts on, new timing belt, new power steering belt, new belt for the alternator and AC pump. And it was shortly after I put that belt on, like the same drive home from when I drove it to the shop and I changed the belt myself. And I set the tension and I drove home and I hear squeak, 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 squeak. And 15 miles later, squeak, 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 squeak. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, that happens on occasion. A new belt on some rusty pulleys or worn pulleys, even you'll get some squeaking. So I thought nothing of it, and it would continue on for days like that, weeks, like over a month like that, just every so often. Squeak, 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 squeak. Well, apparently at work, the alternator must have seized up here because, and then started a fire. Because when I was changing out this belt, I noticed that the alternator shaft had a little bit of play to it, and when you roll it around, you could hear real faint. It wasn't bad, but I knew I'd want to replace it soon. And it was only three weeks later of just driving to work and back, 20 miles. And the sucker it must have locked up like about the time I parked it. So much heat. And then it gets trapped in the stube. And on the day it happened, wind was just blowing this direction, which means air is not getting in that tube. And I mean, wind was blowing. It was 35 mile per hour winds that day. Just ridiculous. So I'm pretty sure that is a culprit of our fire. I'm pretty sure it stemmed from underneath this plastic cover and blew out the side thanks to the wind. And it just stirred and simmered until I parked it. And then it was able to just smoke, sit and stir, and then eventually ignite. And all this melted plastic, it was basically liquid lava dripping off of the exhaust manifold. So that's what we get to tend to. So before I even bother firing this thing up, everything's coming out. I mean everything. Engine's coming out, transmission's coming out. The steering rack, that is coming out. So then this guy will be manual steering. It will still have AC. It'll still have cruise control. But it'll be a manual transmission car. And we'll rebuild the engine because it was due for that anyways. I wanted to be proactive about that. The head gaskets and the valve stem seals in this thing fail from time, age, not just miles. So I wanted to change all of those so it would stop leaking and stinking. All little stuff, all for the greater good. But the love of God has forced my hand, and we will be addressing this sooner than later with much haste. The problem, though, is that won't be today. Because here's what we've been doing today. Today, it was on the docket to finally evaluate this thing. It had been sitting since March 2nd, just as you see it after I towed it home from work. We walk over to the other cars. Green 82 EXP. The springs have been saying like mad in the back. Like, very bad. And there is cardboard in the back, I grant you that. But it's only cardboard. There's less than 50 pounds of cardboard in the back of this car. And it's sagging so crazy bad. My camber is just crazy in the negatives. And then I think because of that, it's been looking like my front end has slowly been lifting up. And that helped, that just makes the positive camber up front worse. So anyway, doing this rear springs in this guy was going to be a hot ticket item this weekend, but well, God has forced my hand, and I now have other plans. As soon as I started driving this guy, March 3rd, I get a battery round, throw it in this guy, fire it up, check all my fluids, made sure everything was peachy. It was. I go to work, and I come back that evening on March 3rd, the day after the wagon chose to bite the dust. I'm driving down the road, and I'm hearing what sounds like a loose wheel bearing. And, well, I get home, and yep, sure enough, that was the case. The axle nut on the front right here, it was loose. Like, it was halfway off the tip of the shaft here. And the first quarter inch of the shaft isn't even threaded, so the whole nut was basically out here. So it was only holding on by one, maybe two threads. It was not doing its job. So I thought, oh, well, you know what, that's nice. Well, I got all the bearings here, but it's 4 o'clock in the evening in early March, so it's going to be dark by 5, maybe 5:30-ish. So how about we just we'll disassemble the bearings, because they looked fine. I popped them apart, everything looked good, packed them full of grease, stuck it back in there, and then I torqued the nut to spec when I was done, after I rolled it over as many times as I could. Torque up the axle nut to spec, and I called it good. And I figured, well, you know what, in a month or two we will actually go and replace the wheel bearings when the weather is a lot more forgiving. That was this week. So this week, weather shaped up, and I thought, you know what, we're going to take out this bearing, and this weekend, which would be today, the Saturday now, we'll take out the whole front bearings here, and we'll replace them all, since I got them. So I go to work Tuesday and Wednesday. Wednesday coming home, I'm driving home, and then I start hearing this make that wheel bearing sound. Crud. Yep, my bearings are on their way out. Well, I'll get home, and I was getting off of work around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, maybe 3:30. I thought, well, I got plenty of daylight. It's bright out until 8 o'clock this time of year, like 7:30 this time of year. So I'll have plenty of time to take care of it. It's 57 degrees outside. It'll be a beautiful day for this. No problem. We'll just get home, and then we'll tend to it. No, about a quarter of a mile later, the noise had gotten worse, and all of a sudden it was, instead of, it turned into, it just out of nowhere, just instant bad. I pulled over, called up my wife and said, hey, grab these couple tools, meet me out on the side of the road. I'm halfway home so I'm 10 minutes from work, 10 minutes from home. But that wasn't good enough. I'd have a hard time limping it back. So I said, hey, grab these couple tools, come out. But then I remembered, you can't get to the bearing without taking the caliper off. And then I remembered, you can't get to the bearing after all that stuff is off. You can't get to the bearing without pulling the hub off. Oh, crap. Yeah, you know what? This is going to be an at-home project. So I fire it back up, and I drive a quarter of a mile, and the noise just all of a sudden, again, becomes unbearable. Oh, good gracious. So I pulled over, called it quits, ran out, fetched the tow truck, towed this guy home. Obviously not on all four wheels, but drug it home on a tow rig. Got it here. Now pop it apart, and yeah, the rear inside cage and bearings, they're nowhere to be found. This is the inner race, and that was there on the inside even. That was there, but all the needle bearings in the cage for the needle bearings, they were literally gone, and they had been there only 4 weeks ago. Yeah, 4 weeks ago. They were there and full of grease. Nope, not good enough. But the outside bearings were all there, and they weren't too bad. Okay, well, you know what? We'll set this to the side. I'll have to bum a ride for a little while, and we'll definitely address this weekend. I got all the bearings. We'll be okay. When we fast forward to yesterday, which is Friday, and all of this happened Wednesday. Friday comes around. Take it into town. I had ordered up. I'm sorry. No, Thursday. Thursday, Thursday, this was home waiting for me. I had a bum ride. So I got home, not at the greatest time on Thursday, like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And it was cold and rainy. But yeah, I had to get it done, and I knew it would be pretty easy being I had it disassembled like this. I knew it would suck because I had done this to this car, just a few weeks prior. So all this stuff would be rare and ready to go. I'd have this banged out in a couple hours. So I got it to the way you see in about an hour's time. It took me, most of the time was spent just grabbing the couple tools I needed, and then carefully getting the outside races out, which involved cutting them with a Dremel and then driving them out with a chisel punch. That kind of sucked. Last time I did these, they were not that hard to remove. So I'm guessing all the heat had made them swell, and that's both why the needle bearings were loose inside, and the cage was so wedged into the knuckle. So I get it all apart. I get my two bearings around, and I realize, oh crud, there's supposed to be a seal on the backside. Here's one of those seals. It's in pretty rough shape. It had been letting out who knows how much grease. So there's one of those on the backside. Oh crud. Well, I'll look and see if I have one. I bought all of the bearings for this entire car just the summer before, and I changed out both rear bearings already, and I put new seals in. So let me go see if I have front seals. I didn't have any front seals. So Friday morning, so that's late Thursday night. I call up a place, say, hey, can you guys get me the seal? And they're like, oh yeah, we'll have it to you. Well, our transit truck comes in with those at around midnight, 12:30, somewhere in there. So as soon as we open at 7:30 a.m. Friday morning, you'll be able to have them. I thought, sweet. You know what? That's fine. I'll definitely take it. I asked for two. They said, well, we can only get the one. And before they hung up, I said, oh, you made sure that that's not for the transmission, right? It's for the actual knuckle, the actual hub, right by the wheel. And he's like, oh, yeah. And then he hastily hangs up. Well, the next morning, I go to at Napa, the same Napa that I called, and the same guy was working there. I get there, and I'm like, hey, I called about a seal last night. I think it's in this morning. He's like, oh, yeah, it's right here. Grabs the box, pops it open. Yeah, no, buddy. That seal was for the output of the transmission. So like that's a probably the best way to describe it is a differential seal, the output seal of the transmission. I said, that was kind of, I specifically asked not for this. He's like, oh, yeah, well, say what year is your car? Because there's a serial number break. I'm like, yeah, buddy, I got an 82, and I know this seal is from 81 to 83, and he gives me some bullshit about, well, 84 shows a difference, so it wasn't showing up on our computer screen. I'm not falling for that bait and switch, pal. I asked. I had confirmed you had the right thing in your cart, and you said, "Oh yeah, no problem." I show up, and now there's a problem. So it's entirely on you. So that was my first ever dealing with those guys. It's my last. I'm not dealing with that local Napa ever again. So that's 2 Napas now I've had to completely annex due to complete unbearable incompetency and then lying to the consumer. Terrible. So I start looking around that afternoon, and while I was there, I asked. He said, "Oh no, the soonest we could get the correct seal, the one I meant to order, is like a few days from now." I said, so I had chosen to instead shop around to visit a couple other local auto parts stores, and O'Reilly's, they don't carry either of these seals. Advance Auto doesn't carry either of these seals. AutoZone doesn't carry either of these seals. But Auto Value went into them and they said, "Oh, we can order those, and we'll have the outer one, so the one I'm closest to. We'll have that one by like I think you said 7:30, maybe 8 o'clock in the morning, whatever time they open. Saturday, the following day, like 24 hours later, not even 12 hours later." And I said, "Oh, sure. Yeah, that sounds great. How about the inner one? The one that I need the most. Because, like, if I had the inner one, I could install my 2 new bearings, put the hub on, and drive this for a while. And then whenever the outer one comes in, I simply remove the caliper, remove the rotor, remove the hub, install my seal, put it all back together, and the car's at 100%. And then in the meantime, I'll order up all the stuff for the driver's side and get that going, get that coming." Nope. It's half a week's wait on the inner front seal. So this is how Greenie is parked for a little while until the goods can come. Arg. Because I'm not going to reassemble it without the grease seals. It's probably what killed this in the first place. Living without the outer one, not very concerned. Living without the inner one, very concerned. Especially since that one's going to be a pain in the butt to change if I choose to go without it for so long. So now what? Last summer I actually had to park my nice 82 EXP for a clutch issue. Now this isn't a fault of the cars. And it's not a fault of mine. But I can't explain it. But here's what's going on. For a while in my blue car, I've been noticing that this lever has to be closer and closer and closer to the firewall for me to actually have clutch travel. And it meant that my clutch cable had so much extra slack, I had to shim the crap out of it right here by the transmission. So I did that because normally it's supposed to be like this. Well, I had pushed it out, installed a washer, and that worked great for a week. But then I had to do it again, install a second washer on top of that. I'm like, well, what the heck? So when it came time to do that, I looked underneath the clutch pedal in the car, and I found one of the issues. My clutch cable was fraying, and it was only down to one strand. Because obviously there's some sort of wear that I keep having to compensate for. So I changed out the cable, And when I changed out the cable, that's when I realized, oh, there's not much play left for the throwout bearing arm. Like, it's like this. I could literally only get about half more inch of travel for this to do anything. So that's when I said, well, you know what, I'll have to park it. Because I'm guessing what's happening is, you know, there's this fork that moves the throwout bearing in and out. There's two pieces actually. You know, there's this lever up here, and that is welded to a pivoting shaft that goes all the way down in here. And then you have a pair of forks that bolt onto that shaft in here, and that moves your throwout bearing in and out. I'm guessing that my fork here is sloppy on the shaft. It's kind of like one of the only problems it could actually be. So I'm guessing that's the issue, but I'll have to take the engine out to find out. So that's the other project this weekend. The fourth and final project this weekend is getting the engine back into this guy. But as I make this video and demonstrate what's wrong with the clutch in my nice blue one, it appears something is wrong and or broken in this fork set. Looking around here, what you are witnessing is my in real time diagnostics of this here. I seem to be missing plastic stem that goes in here. I think I see the hole at least. And then that's the little top of that stem goes through this hole. So you kind of set this in here and you click that little stem in the top, and then you're all set. This guy's actually in really good shape. This car, I think, had a Luck clutch in it. It's actually sitting on the floor here next to me. Sure enough, on the day I was taking the engine out, it started raining shortly after. So I quick grabbed all my stuff, drug it inside, and the only thing I got rusty were my flywheel and my pressure plate. And, well, they got rather rusty. But that'll clean off no problem in the first 2 miles of driving. You know, the first 2 stop signs I gotta leave. So I'll have to do some digging. Like I said, I got a new throwout bearing for my blue one should I need it. But I'll have to take a look at some of my arms, see what they're supposed to be like, and get some sort of pin around so this one's not spinning in place. That pin is the only thing that keeps this guy from just going bananas in there. That's a serious problem. If you have this sucker banging around that shaft, you're going to wear out your bearing, you're going to wear out your shaft, mess up your fork, and then also you'll mess up the fingers of the clutch. So, I now have one extra thing to do, but the reason why the engine's not in yet, not only, I just noticed that while I was talking to you, the steering bushing. Well, this has a manual rack, and anyone with these cars should know that the manual racks are famous for having failed internal bushings. You can see it. You can hear it. That is the rack just flopping around inside the tube. Here's another manual rack that you can see the rack itself is literally bent. Freaking derby racers out there bending crap, making my life hard. This is what a stock bushing is supposed to look like. Now take a good look, because it's very rare you will see this on any of these racks. That is the factory bushing, and you can see plain as day that even in this one, it is slopped out. But it's still present. Because what happens as you drive down the road, there's loads and bumps and crap on this end, because on this end it's supposed to have a similar bushing, We look inside, we can't really see it because of all the grease. But it's kind of held in by this plug cap here. That actually does unthread or pop out one of the two. And that is actually able to put a little bit of tension on the rack itself. The rack, whatever you want to call a rack cartridge. But on this end, it's so far away from that. Any bumps down here have much more effect on the bushing in the end tip here. So that means that this crazy rare sight of a bushing typically wears out. And it gets so bad because it's a very soft, I don't think it's nylon. I think it's more of ABS. Very soft, malleable ABS goes in there. And then the shaft just bouncing around and moving in and out, chews it up crazy fast. The bushing is nowhere near as hard as it needs to be. So then eventually it starts shaking around and you'll get so much play that just driving in a straight line, for example, driving in a straight line, as you brake, it kicks forward, and as such your front wheel turns left, and when you accelerate, the front wheel turns right, the passenger wheel. I'm talking in both instances. So then driving this becomes just crazy erratic, as bad as the front wheel bearing being gone. So what's the fix? Well, you have to go and make your own. Okay. Now there are a couple new old stock replacement bushings out there, but there's not really a part number out there for them. One of my friends has managed to actually score a couple of them, but I have not yet had that luck. And I'm not too concerned because, like I said, it's too terribly soft. So I make my own out of harder materials. This is PVC. Now, I don't remember what type of grade this PVC is, but it's gray underground conduit. Good stuff. Hard stuff. Now, preferably, this stuff's even harder. The white crap. And you can usually get it a little bit thicker even. And I'll show you here. And why is thickness so important? Well, in all reality, it's not too important. But when you have multiple cars, you need multiple sizes. I'll show you in a little bit. But here's a gray conduit next to the white conduit, and you see the white is just the tiniest bit wider on the outside. And that's important because the bushing that you make to put in these tubes, there's a couple sizes. Okay, I found out today doing this one on a 1983 EXP. So 1983, they changed the manual rack. And I had kind of known that before because the 83 tie rods are totally different. This is what the inners look like of an 83. This is what the inners look like of an 81, 82. You can see that these have male threads and they're perfectly round, kind of like in a bullet shape. But then these guys, perfectly round in a cylindrical shape, and they have female threads for the male rack. Whereas the 81, 82 rack is female. That it gets better. It gets better. Take a look at oh crud, maybe it's under the box here. The power rack ends are even more different. So let's go look at one of those. So I know I can see it sticking out of the thing. Yep, here we go. This one's got its... One of these I swear had the boot off. Here we go. This one's got the boot partially off, so we'll just slide that back. Oh, you can barely tell in the lighting, it's pretty poor, I will admit. Apologize for lack of light. It's been too focused on other crap, but you can see it's plain as day a hexagon shape. And that hexagon inner hub of that inner tie rod is female. Just like these 83 manual racks. But anywho, so the diameter of the rack itself never really changed. This one measures out at, I think, 22 millimeters. This one measures out at 22 millimeters. So, knowing that, I went out and got some conduit adapters. I found one that was 21.5 millimeters on the inside, which is really good. It would take minimal rounding out for it to fit around that like a glove. Now, when this is loose, it fits around that perfect. So that probably is 21.5 or just the tiniest hair more than that. But as soon as you put it inside a coupler, this inside piece shrinks, and it can shrink as much as like 0.01 millimeter. But that little bit will make it pretty snug on the rack, and that's not ideal. But the outside of the tube on this one, the tube I think is 35 millimeters. And on this one, oh no, I'm pretty sure I got that backwards. I think this one's 35 millimeters. And then this one over here is like 33. Now it is actually different. So I had to make this. So what I did was I did exactly this maneuver. I found a double nail coupler, cut it in half, and now it will serve 2 cars. And then I put a small female to male adapter inside of that. I pushed it in all the way. I'm not going to do that here in case I need to take these apart. That's not going in the car today. This guy is. After I squeezed them two together, took them over to the bench grinder, grind the outside until it was not only a smaller diameter, but it's still round. This is almost perfectly round. I have one small flaw on the top here, but I'm not too worried about that. The main thing is that this sits inside the tube snug. This needs to be very tight to the, the outside of the tube. But at the same time, whatever you do on the inside, for me, when I started grinding this, it got warm and it shrunk the diameter some. So when I started doing that, I had to be conscientious about what I'm doing on the inside. Oh, it was just a couple quick seconds on the Dremel tool with a sanding drum, and now it fits in these like a glove. Now it may not fit this one all too great because I see we do have quite the shard here. So let me fix that real quick. Okay, so I guess I could have kept the camera rolling for how quick that was going to be. So I dressed that up. That's all I did was I fixed that burr. I smoothed the transition between that and the rest of it. Now this fits in here quite well. Like extremely well. This is ideal. Where it should be kind of snug. Like it should feel exactly like this. This is so good. So good. So this is ideal. This is what you need to be getting on the inside. You can see there's zero, well, there's a micron of play here. But I'm perfectly happy with that. The problem is on my other one, there's threads on the outside of the shaft. So I had to make this so it would clear the threads. The threads aren't bigger than the shaft, but the threads are sharper than the shaft. So as I get this on, I didn't want to getting stuck. So I made this a tad larger than it needed to be so I could ensure that it would get past the threads without handing up. So that's why it slips in here just fine. But on the outside, you can see it's way too small for this tube. Way too small for this tube. Let's take that off. And then we will put it on this guy. And you will see it just barely fits in the tube. Got it on nice and snug. And I'll go over here and I'll turn the wheel, and I bet you'll see it not pop out. So I bet that bushing, I did turn the wheel, bushing stayed in place, and the rack lost its play. Ta-da! It's that easy, people. That's all you need to do. When we had done this before, we were able to do this with only one piece of PVC or conduit or PEX or something of that matter. We were able to find something that was so thick-walled, we only needed one piece. And once we did it, we'd cut a slit over here so that we could actually compress it. So I think it was probably a size too large in diameter, but it was so close. We just cut the slit, squeezed it in to fit, because it naturally wants to expand. So it locks itself inside the tube and it won't come out. Now, I could have done that here, but I couldn't find any PVC based pipes that would do that. Nothing I've found would be able to serve the size I needed, except for all these couplers. But these are so hard. If I try cutting them and squeezing them in, they'd more likely, fold or collapse or crack. And I don't need that. I need it to work and last. So I did this. It's really snug to the tube. So after this video is over, we're going to run the thing all the way in. Actually, I'll probably run it out a whole bunch. And then I have motorcycle seal drivers, for fork seals. I'll stick that around the rack, give that a couple gentle taps, make sure it's seated inside the tube until I'm satisfied. And it will be snug. It's going to fit great. And then we can button it all up. But since we're here, we'll take this here. The side that I did cut, because like I said, I had to. But I didn't grind down at all. This is just the way it comes. You can see it's still got the part number sticker on it. So let's prop this up here. You can see this fits the inside, plenty of room to spare. And then down in here, you can see this actually fits snug to the tube. But you saw earlier with the half that I did cut off and ground, it had to be ground for it to fit in here. But you can see there's a little bit of gap here. But that's precisely why I had also gotten the slightly thicker white PVC. Now keep in mind your results will vary. I will include dimensions of what your rack requires. The rack itself and the rack's tube. I will list those exact dimensions. Because I've met one guy, and I told him, hey, you'll have to do this and this and this and ensure the fit. Well, he's not a very DIY guy, so he took my instructions, passed them on to a machinist along with his entire rack, and said, hey, make me something out of Delrin, I think? Delrin? Very HDMA, nylon-y type plastic. I'm not good at this plastic biology stuff, if you haven't noticed. And that guy was able to reproduce, something perfect fit. And it worked perfect. And he made the guy a couple, and I had asked, I said, hey, you know what, you could probably actually sell these, make some money. And so he asked the machinist, and the machinist was not interested in it because he couldn't warranty any of the fitment or anything like that. So that fell through. That never came to anything at all. So this still remains the main solution here. Yeah. But with that fixed, I just need to secure the throwout bearing inside that transmission. And then I'm actually able to proceed with installing the engine back in this guy. And with some luck, I might be able to have it fired up this evening. But we will see. There's going to be a little bit of work involved. Because all the smog pump stuff, that's going to go. mounting the stock 83 AC is a pain in the butt. From 81 to 83, they all look like this, and they take this most wacky mount that makes it dang near impossible to change out the AC compressor while the engine's in the car. It also makes it really hard to get the engine in and out of there because the compressor more or less has to be attached to it. Ah! So we'll get that in here. I also want to, well, I don't know if it'll be today, but at some point, a lot of the coolant lines are going to be re-ran so that I can, actually have decent access to the oil filter. So if you do that, you can actually change the oil filter from the top side. If you imagine no vacuum lines on that intake manifold, it's very easy to change everything on these engines. It makes it so easily serviced. I love it. But until you get to that point, it does kind of suck. So we'll do that. Engine will go in. We'll fire that up, make sure the whole system's A-okay. I have to get a starter around. I got a bunch of them laying about. But I will real soon be getting one of those 2.3 Tempo and 3.0 Vulcan starters. Same starter. Here we go. You can see it here. It's nice and shiny. That shiny guy. That's our new starter. It's a heck of a lot smaller and lighter than the original ones. Those freaking boat anchors. Not to mention it draws a lot less power and is a lot more efficient, so it's able to actually turn the engine around over quicker. It definitely turns it over a lot easier, which means it's starting better because we're getting more voltage to the coil and the electronic ignition module. So all in all, it makes for a much better starting experience. I have zero complaints about that upgrade. It's an upgrade on every scale of the front. And then where will we be after that? Well, after that, this guy will be up and running. I had checked the rear wheel bearings, and sometime I'll jack up the fronts, double check those. I also have to do a once over with all the brakes. The brakes seem to work perfectly fine, but I don't know when the fluid was last changed, so that's getting out. New's getting bled into all four corners, and we should have good working brakes. And then after that, that's really it. We'll fire it up and we'll see what we have going on for electrical woes and issues. I'm prepared for almost anything, but I'm not expecting too much of a battle. Because the steering column is assembled, which means the ignition switch works. That's a telltale. If you see that thing turn to powder, it's because the ignition switch is bad, needs replacing. And that's an easy enough job to do, but it's more time added to this whole deal. Another thing I need to do is fix the door handle on the other side. And secure the louvers. And then after I do the underhood stuff, part of the electrical is me going around checking, make sure all my lights are working as usual. I brought out the door handle because that was a recent failure. The pivot pin on this door handle actually failed on the silver car just a couple days ago. So now it's kind of flopping around. I'll have to disassemble that, fix it. And it was like 2 weeks after I started driving Greenie here again that this door handle had died. The handle itself is perfectly fine, but you can see there's like a yellowish plastic there. That is supposed to be in a loop shape. I'll see if I have one that I can show you. And that loop shape kind of contains a rod that goes down to the latch, the actual door latch, and opens the door. Here we go. Actually, this one's different because it's an Escort door. This one is a little different, but I can make one of these work. But you can see on the Escort one, Now all it has to do is push that rod down. On the EXP door, it's shaped slightly different. This one here I remember being different. Aha! And there's our problem. So on that door, someone had changed out the handle for a rear Escort handle, I think. I'd have to double check. But this here, if you're able to see it, maybe you can see it. I hope. I keep tapping the screen, it's making a lot of smudges. This is what that plastic part is supposed to look like. And it's this plastic part that had broken off of my EXP one. And this one, you can see it's actually pretty loose. So, that's what I got going on with that. Now, I'm hoping I can fix it without having to just completely bypass it. But we'll see. Oh, sorry. I'm trying to be focusing in on this guy here, which is different. Because if I can't fix it, I'll have to switch to one of these type of door handles. But it's an EXP, so it won't be chrome. It needs to be black. Now, they do make Mustang ones. Well, the problem with the Mustang ones is they're usually plastic, which is both lame, unreliable, and then on top of that, they usually have the wrong. They have that Ron style plastic bushing. They have what is supposed to be on that Escort, where it's just a round hole that pushes down on it instead of the oval captivating hole that kind of tugs up and down with it. So these would take retrofitting anyways, plus they're plastic and very flimsy, very prone to breaking. EXPs, no such issues. So that's going to take a little bit of surgery, and then I can start using that door again. The other thing is the door hinges are slopped out. I was looking into getting bushings to fix those. Now the bushings exist. You can buy them for the Fox body. I need to pop open my 88's door to see if they're the same. Or, interchangeable at least, I mean. But they don't look too easily serviced on these. On these, the whole pivot pin itself, it's about 1.5 inches long. It's mushroomed on both ends, and that encapsulates the hinge. So I'd have to grind off that mushroom flare, drive out the old hinges, put in the new ones, and then replace that pin with something. I don't know if I can find another pin, another rivet that's really long, or replace it with a nut and bolt. But that would take a bunch of R&D. And then it was when I was looking at that I found out, well, it's not the it's not the pin bushings that are bad. It's my hinge brackets themselves. The bracket itself has a hole, a hole that the bushing sits in. Well, the bushing is perfectly fine, but the steel bracket is oblong, so the bushing just flops around in here. Well, there's the problem. Well, what's the fix for that? Taking the hinge out, welding it, drilling a new hole. So, no, I'm not going to be messing around with that. I'm just going to steal Escort hinge off of that silver guy over there, huh? I'll do the trick, eh? So we'll take it off of that thing. Put it in the driver door. I need both of them. They come in pairs. Put both of them in this guy, and then that door will be A-okay, and then I can finally get back to doing body work. We got a little bit of rust trying to creep in here and there, but aside from the couple brown spots you see, the car is actually rust-free. It was just a tiny bit on the floors. I've removed that. A little bit on the wheel wells, just the front ones. These front fenders, they've seen some action. You can see they're loaded with dents. And it's only where paint is missing that it has chosen to rust, because there's no paint to protect the metal. So it happened that way, not the other way around. But as I drive this guy more and more, I realize a few things, like it needed the window channel seals, so I did that. It still needs the belt line scrapers, so when it's time for paint, this whole trim piece has come off and we'll change out those. Recently, the sealant has failed around the windshield towards the top, so as I drive around on a rainy day, rain comes up, drips down on my lap in there. So I need to take this trim off, tend to that. But, you know, it's like, if I'm removing all this trim, I might as well have the car ready for paint. So there is a very high chance that this car is getting painted this year back to its original green. Oh, sorry. Not a good shade there. Here we go. It's original green. It's original green. It's original green. But dirty. It's original green. You know, be such a cool car. And it was born with a black bottom, so that's what it's going to get, is a lower black two-tone. This guy will be looking pretty sharp. I just have to decide if I want to put in, you can see way in the back there, LN7 nose on it, or just leave it as an EXP. It's already got the bubble hatch, and we have to decide if it's going to stay that way. This will more or less be my wife's car, unless she adopts this guy. This guy's pretty slick, very cool. So whichever car she wants to be primarily hers, well, she'll have a choice on what hatch she gets, what nose cone she gets, the wheels, how many mirrors, interior colors, yada yada yada. Loads of options for her, because I got so many of these. I got all this loose Escort and EXP parts. So she'll be tickled pink when it's time for her to pick a car. But so far, that's kind of what we're dealing with. And this will consume the rest of today, much or most of tomorrow, and then probably a good portion of Monday. So when we reach the end of some of these projects, we'll have videos up. It's not going to be a lot of progress, but there should be some stuff to talk about. Hopefully more good than bad. I don't need any more surprises. I need stuff to just work like the way I'm used to, you know. It's time for some good freaking luck, man. I've had cars light on fire. That door handle broke because someone tried jacking it. So I've had that. They had front wheel bearing failure. And had to get this towed home. I've had to limp the wagon home many of times, because that's just been nothing but The Exorcist to me. The Possessed. So we'll see. But we will have this engine in this car sometime this weekend. And there will be some sort of video to follow. Just not too sure what. So, yeah, we'll leave it at that. And like I said, keep an eye out for more photos. There will be some goods. Yeah. There will be some good stuff coming.